Thousands of people in Lagos are homeless after their houses in the waterfront informal settlement Makoko were demolished by the government. Authorities say these structures were unsafe and posed a serious risk, but critics insist the government has other motives. Makoko is located on the shores of Lagos Lagoon. It is partly made up of floating communities and houses built on stilts. The settlement was established more than 100 years ago. Now, in a moment, I will be talking to an urban planner about Makoko's future, with Lagos slated to become the most populous city in the world. But first, DW's Amaka Okoye visited the community after the demolitions. Affected residents told her they've been left stranded.
Without warning, at the end of last month, the excavators came and began eating their way through the wooden houses. Makoko is a densely populated waterfront settlement in Lagos. It is home to hundreds of thousands of people. But human rights organizations say that by the time the government operation ended on January the 23rd, 3 of them were dead, including 2 infants, after authorities used tear gas on residents protesting the demolitions.
Please tell the whole world what is happening. My business collapsed. I have nowhere to go. We need help.
This woman says the roof was ripped from her home, but she has to spend the night here because she has nowhere else to go. Others were left to salvage whatever could still be saved before the demolition reached their homes. Javier runs a community school. Now he's moving the desks to dry land and his belongings to this boat, which has become home for his family.
I spent 3 years, over 3 years to build this school. This is a structure that accommodates 650 children. When we bring them in, we give them food, we teach them and we drop them back. So they want to demolish it when we don't have anywhere to go. They don't give us any letter. They don't try to have a meeting with us. We have a relocation plan, nothing like that.
And the demolitions have destroyed livelihoods too.
All the fish I smoked in my house were destroyed, such as hake, croaker, and sole. All of them were destroyed. I fainted that day, and people had to revive me. What you see here was given to me on credit. That's how I made my living.
Officials insist the clearances were only out of concern for public safety and have hit back at the criticism.
We're not demolishing the whole of Makoko. We're clearing people not to get to Third Mainland Bridge and to stay off behind the high tension.
But residents understood that there was an agreed 100-meter setback from the power lines and say the demolitions extend well beyond that.
This is the bone of contention. The flag post marks a 100-meter setback from the power line, a boundary which the government says it has repeatedly warned residents not to build beyond. The demolitions did not stop there. It has moved over 200 meters away from the agreed marker.
Authorities have not publicly acknowledged any change to the setback distance. Officials maintain the clearance is guided by safety regulations and planning law around power transmission lines. So far, the government has only said that it has plans for those who have been displaced by the demolitions, but with no details on offer. Affected residents in Makoko face a very uncertain future.
To talk more about what the future looks like for residents of Makoko, we've invited Stephen Ajadi onto the program. He's an architect, urban planner and development economist. Welcome to DW News Africa, Dr. Ajadi. The government in Lagos says the demolitions in Makoko are about safety and urban planning. From your expertise as an urban planner, was this inevitable?
I think it was. It is a kind of an inevitable process for both the slum area and the government. I mean, it's not the first time they'll be demolishing Makoko, but this is probably one of the first periods of time that they've done a very huge chunk of it. So Historically, I would say it happens in certain social political cycles. So yeah, it's kind of inevitable.
Right. And as government puts it, the demolition was about structures in the settlement that were built too close to power lines. Can you speak more to the safety risk that these transmission lines posed to residents?
First of all, I think from the standpoint of the government, you must understand the behavior of slums. They have a kind of extemporaneous sprawl character. They expand in different directions for different reasons at different times. And basically, power lines are very dangerous, especially when they span across large water bodies and even small water bodies. They're quite dangerous. So planners avoid putting residences near power lines. So yeah, it is a huge health risk. Some people will say it's a huge life risk, and yeah, it's a huge problem.
Now, Makoko, we're talking about a place that's more than 100 years old, and it's been growing as an informal settlement. And you really get the sense that if you've been there, that residents have adapted to living on water. But is this community sustainable? Can people live there as they do now for another 100 years?
Yes, they can. But the argument is if they can in the same manner that they are doing now. And that's really the question, because Makoko has existed for the better part of 172 years. It's about 1.2 square kilometers. It has a huge density. It's about 15 times denser than Lagos. And that's not even the impressive part of it. The impressive part of Makoko is the sustainability of the culture. It has it has demonstrated a huge resilience in terms of the culture of the people. I think that Makoko as a place has evolved over different cycles of urbanity that Lagos has experienced. But I think we are at peak times of urbanization, and I think Makoko has to adjust. However, Makoko must not be victimized in this process, because let us not be mistaken. Makoko is undergoing a process of change. All cities on the planet are undergoing a process of change, and how we value that change and how we go about embodying that change is quite important. So yeah, they can stay there for another 100 years. However, the systems of their current living dynamics has to drastically change.
Right, and I'm interested to hear your ideas about what that change looks like, because some experts propose gentrification or improving the conditions in informal settlements rather than raising them to the ground. And if you insist that this community of Makoko can stay for another 100 years, how would that work then? What would a gentrified, if I could say that, Makoko look like?
I think the verb stay is a very complicated word, because then you will also think of a question: can Lagos stay for the next 100 years in this particular way? And the answer is yes and no. Cities evolve. We're going through urbanization. Urbanization is a very, very complicated process. We don't even understand it yet. I don't think anybody has a full grasp of the understanding of. It's the biggest experiment in humankind. The idea of rebuilding or redesigning or replanning Makoko, is a very huge one. And the question is the standpoint of how the government sees it and how the people of Makoko, or the people who are trying to fight for them or keep them, see it. There are two perspectives to this. Both standpoints are actually slightly laudable, but they are both problematic, because both of them can happen at the same time. And I don't think any party want both of them to happen at the same time. So there is this problem of not embracing the idea that we can have a typological heterogeneity of space in that area. And real estate economic models, especially West African real estate economic models, which is a derivative of the West anyway, they have a single model. And the single model is we have to build spaces and we have to sell them, and we have to make money, and we have to use the money to build more spaces, and we have to sell them, and we have to make more money. And sadly, that's the only model.
Right. And if we just maybe zoom out a little bit, in general, as you were pointing out earlier, Africa's big cities are growing rapidly as more and more people relocate from rural areas to the big cities. And it seems city authorities across the continent are struggling to keep up with that demand. So what needs to be happening from a sort of urban planning perspective to be able to accommodate growing populations in African cities?
It's quite complicated because most governments don't like the answers to that question. The idea is most governments want to provide housing as a business. They want to make profits or they want to make returns immediately from the provision of housing to people. That's not going to happen if you want to close the gap of housing, the deficiency. It's not going to happen because you have a huge amount of people who cannot afford housing. And that is not peculiar to Africa. It's a global problem. Housing has become increasingly expensive, and the technologies for rapidly reducing the cost of housing is not as sophisticated or is not meeting up with the demands of the people who can afford housing. So the idea is the change of the philosophy of the provision of housing by the government. It shouldn't be seen as a form of immediate business. It should be seen as an investment. Because if a lot more people get housing, especially in the middle and the lower incomes, there's so many things that can change in the city that will eventually increase the GDP of the city, increase internet generated revenue in the city, and actually increase a lot more societal metrics like safety. So it's not something that shows itself up immediately. The returns are not in the money the government gets from selling housing to people, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's low-income housing, whether it's high-end housing. It's in the fact that if more people are housed, they become a lot more useful to themselves. And if they're a lot more useful to themselves, they become a lot more useful to the city. And that's why I always say it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's a very long-term investment, but it's an investment that will pay off. There's so much research that shows that it will pay off.
Well, thanks so much for those insights, Dr. Stephen Ajadi. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.